Alright, this is a FU video. FU stands for follow-up. As regards to yet another part of the video response about a particular thread, I believe, and I could be wrong, that was started by Same OG and about fudging dice and deceptive practices at the table by GMs, etc., etc., etc. And I wanted to make sure that I read every single response, internalized it, kind of flipped it over my head. So this particular video, strangely enough, is in defense of rolling the dice. But I'm going to start it out with a little explanation of my demeanor / response from the last video about thumbs, asses, and fudge. Alright, first of all, and believe me, I feel that the purpose of creating this large number of video responses is to create dialogue, think deeper, absolutely positively, not taking anything personal along any lines for anyone, that none of us should be doing that at all. But the words used were creating a, as a game master, lying to players, creating a deceptive atmosphere. Some of the words used, in my opinion, seemed very, it seemed along the lines of very negative, very adversarial, and I understand that the reason those words were used was to create a dialogue, and why it is that GMs that are into more of a narrative storytelling would even possibly use GM fiat and just say, hey, that die roll didn't exist, this is how it's going to happen, and why. Okay? The reason why I felt so passionately about it is because anybody who even bothers listening to 2 minutes of anything I have to say knows that I'm story first, dice second. And that I am not discounting the dice, which is initially, this is what this video is about, is in defense of the dice. But the reason why I felt so passionately about it not being about the negative connotations about fudging dice is because as a lifelong GM and person that's into storytelling, is because although it could be perceived this way by players, in no way, shape, or form, by using the GM storyteller control and saying, hey, that die roll didn't happen, this is how the story progresses, is not a method to be negative, to purposely lie to players, to create a system where, as a game master, you're just trying to pat your own back and to hell with the players. Are there people like that? Of course. You know, it's the whole GM overlord, mentality where everything I say goes and the player's actions don't mean anything. It's actually the complete opposite. More often than not, what ends up happening and why GMs even bother using their ultimate role as a game master to rule over the die rolls is because they know that their players are trying their hardest to engage in a great story, lots of action, great drama. They've made 5 pages of backstory. They've created a great idea how they're going to sneak up on the creature and trap it in a net and drop it in a pit or whatever. They're talking to an NPC and they've done their darndest to learn the NPC's habits and foils, and this NPC's shown up 5 different times and all this kind of stuff. And then you get to the pivotal roll where they've made 5 previous rolls to sneak around, climb, hide, get disguise, trick the guard, undo the trap, and finally they're at the very end of it, and one errant die roll of a 3 with no bonuses to it, and the whole thing just goes to shit. And there are many GMs that are going, wait a minute, these people just, at my table, just spent all this time and effort to create this great story arc. Why ruin it with one errant die roll? And that's where that comes from. There isn't this random, it's my story and I don't want anything else to inhibit it. Although that can be, I can see how players would presume that to be the case. But many GMs just want to, knowing full well, and this is, I'm pulling many things from comments as well. Many GMs know full well, if they ask for a die roll, you're going to get mediocre, you're going to get a failure, you're going to get an absolute positively critical success, you're going to get something in the middle. You're asking, when you ask for a die roll, you're asking that this die roll is going to control the story, not myself, not the players, not their actions, not their involvement in the story, and this die roll could derail the plot that everyone at the table, GM and all the players, are agreeing that this is the direction they should go. All right. But more specifically, this video is about letting the dice control the game. Okay? And this is from a storyteller's point of view. I'm not very much of a miniatures, mat board, wargaming kind of concept. I'm very much into storytelling. So here's my defense of why you should let the die roll control everything. First of all, this is to piggyback off of a great argument-worthy thread that Maps and Dragons Philip Posey stated about rolling 3d6 down the line for classic D&D and take what you get. All right. And in many ways, by rolling the dice, that is exactly what ends up happening in game. Right. So the challenge is to accept what the die rolls are and to craft a story around what those die rolls lead to. And one example that I used before was about in a game where a player rolled a critical success and then did like 2 points of damage. And it's crafting a story around this thing where you're going like, oh my God, I made this great roll, but my end result of that great roll is crap. How does the story proceed? You know, making or failing perception rolls, making or failing disabling traps, failing, you know, having a great dialogue with an NPC, getting to know their ins and outs and their families. The player character's a paladin with a 17 charisma and all these bonuses. He talks to the NPC he's known for 15 years, rolls to persuade him and rolls a 3, and it's just like, what? You know, how do you reconcile the die roll with the non-rolled actions that your players are having in your game? Okay? So this challenge is to allow the dice to tell the story even when the dice seem counter to what is happening and counter to how the story is going along. So for example, take the example of the high charisma paladin that everyone respects. The player character that's controlling the paladin has done a great job in interacting with the NPC that he's known for many years, goes to make a persuasion roll. Maybe he's asking this particular NPC, please hide me and my friends from the guard. If they find us, we are in an important mission. We must hide out in your home. This NPC is friendly to them. Maybe the game master even gave some bonuses. And it's like, you know what? If he rolls above a 10, in his mind, he's going to fine. He rolls above a 10 or whatever, great. It's just, he's going to be he's the player character that's controlling the paladin. There's no way he's going to fail this roll. Grabs a die, rolls, maybe rolls a 1, 2, or 3, even with bonuses involved and some circumstances or whatever. Hell, could even have advantage in this particular situation or used inspiration. Roll 2d20 and rolled a 1 and a 3, and now you're going, how the hell do I complete this story? You know, this was an in-the-bag kind of situation that both the players and the game master felt there's no way you can fail this. Player fails it horribly and turns the story. Well, you can play this a couple of ways. Why would the NPC not agree to this? Maybe that NPC knows something on the fly that the player characters didn't know, i.e. deceiving the players as to how the story will progress. So maybe the NPC says, hey, I respect you greatly. I owe your family and your friends a lot. I trust you and yours with my life, but in this situation, I can't do it. I'm going to have to tell the city guard that you're here. And then making that moral choice between the player. Hey, the paladin's like, I'm not going to hurt this guy. But the assassin in the group is like, hey, if he's going to say something, I'm going to have to cut his throat. And now you have an opportunity to role play that out. Instead of, character conflict, now you have a great story. Here's another idea. The NPC completely agrees anyway. Game Master says, I know you failed the role, but the NPC goes completely along with your thing. Yes, I will hide you, but maybe the NPC's child overhears this, or wife and her husband, their spouse overhears this, and a third party overhears it, and they run to the guard. So, in effect, the role did fail, quote-unquote fail, to convince a third party who was listening into this conversation. Okay? Maybe they do call the city guard. The characters are hiding out. The NPC calls the city guard. The city guard comes by, looks for the player characters, and then the NPC, regretting bringing the city guard in, says to the city guard, like, yes, city guard, I'm sorry I brought you here. No, the people you're looking for aren't here. Actually, what I've been doing is I've been hoarding food and water for my family, and I know I've had to share it. And maybe they give themselves up to the city guard, knowing full well they'll be punished for their transgressions to the Chalaxian government or something. And now the player characters, hidden from the city guard, now have to go rescue maybe the NPC, because the paladin's like, hey, he may have had second thoughts, but he gave himself up for us. Creating ideas, and of course, again, as a game master, here I am, I'm taking a die roll, and I'm going, man, that die roll just failed. Instead of just doing a flat out, okay, he just doesn't agree with you, boom, it's over. Just creating more story. Another good way of using die rolls to tell the story is it creates a challenge for everybody, including the game master, and may turn what is essentially a railroad game into a sandbox where the idea that you are aware that the players will succeed in something, even with great bonuses. Let's say, for example, the average bonus of all the players is like a +6 or 7. Your NPC's average bonus is a +1 or 2. All the PCs, all your player characters have twice as many hit points. They do twice as much damage, and for some reason, when they encounter the bad guys, the quote-unquote opening scene where the bandits are on the road, the die rolls just fall in their favor. The player characters just can't roll above an 8 for nothing. All your NPC bandits are rolling 16s and above. They're just not doing any damage. The player characters aren't doing any damage, and just for some reason, this opening scene, which is just the way you're like, I'll throw these bandits in. This is the way that my story's going to go. They'll find some information after they kill off all the bandits. They get some information that they are in cahoots with an even greater evil. And, oh, by the way, there's a village nearby that needs to be saved. Cut and dry. Well, the game doesn't start out that way. So now you have the challenge of manipulating the story. One of the player characters gets killed in the opening scene. And you have that character, the other players at the table, and the game master now have the choice in creating a situation to tell a greater story. Now I'm going to respond to, I guess I came across this in the wrong way in terms of players saying that if they feel that they can never die, if there's no threat to life and limb, then what's the point in playing? And I absolutely agree with that. I suppose I was coming, and maybe I didn't make myself clear, but I was coming at this more or less from 2 points. The first point is opening scene, meaning that the game has just started. The players have not ingrained themselves into the world yet, but a lot of work has been done to create the characters, and the first footsteps have not been taken, and a player character just, boom, through the course of events, couple of dice, boom, they're dead. And I know as a player, I've always hated to be that guy that gets it at the beginning of the movie, and then you're just like, that's my favorite character in the movie. He's dead already? This movie sucks. And the same thing with playing a game. As a game master, you want to create this story, and you've had this great desire to have everyone included, and when one of your players is not included in that, it can hurt. It can hurt your storyline. It can hurt your own feelings because you don't want to exclude. There are many game masters and dungeon masters, storytellers out there, flame tenders that don't want to exclude their players. You know, hey, I started this game. I thought you guys fight some bandits. It wasn't my intention to kill your character. That being said, dice roll the wrong way. You know, as players, we should accept that fact. Hey, you're right. Damn, the dice. I rolled a d20 8 times, and out of that time, I didn't get anything above a 6, and my character just ends up killing it. Oh well. Hey, I'll sit through the rest of the game. If you want, I can pick up an NPC. I'll make up another character. Hey, you guys are 5th level. Hey, let me make up like a 2nd level henchman or lackey that's in there, and I'll keep playing in the game or something. You come up with some ideas to incorporate that one regular player. Is it possible that player can rage flip and just, F this, I'm out of here, this game sucks? Sure, that happens. Happens to everybody. But lethality is part and parcel of many games. And of course, it does depend on what kind of game you're playing. Whether it's gritty, whether it's high heroism, or what have you, it can happen. But on the other hand, as a game master, you also have what I call the end game. And the end game, the big boss fight. You've played 8, 9, 10 sessions. You've gone a long time. Everyone's getting to know these characters. They're getting involved with each other. And it becomes... Here's the harder of the two choices to make as a game master when concerning the players and the die rolls. I know the player characters are sitting here going, everything's based on this one die roll. Please let it be high. You roll, oh, that sucks. And as a game master, you're going, you know what, dude? And dudettes, you put so much time and effort in this. This scene should not just be controlled by an errant die roll. It should be decided upon in some ways by the emotion and the investment in it. The harder of the two, it is easy for the GM, the storyteller, just to say, hey, listen, this is how it turns out. But for that epic death, the epic fail where the archer gets ready to shoot an arrow into the eye of the great beast and the bowstring snaps, or the dwarven warrior has his axe and he jumps off the cliff and gets ready to bury his axe into the back of the dragon's head, and the dragon turns around and swallows him whole or something like that. It's the character crawling away with his last hit points bleeding and suffering, and the bad guy's over top of him about to stab him with the spear, and there's one chance that the rogue can throw a knife into the back of the bad guy and save the player character, and the dagger bounces off a wall and everyone looks at it as it hits the ground, and the bad guy proceeds to kill the player character anyway. It's trying to reconcile those quote-unquote undynamic failures into a cohesive story. And strangely enough, using movies, because I love movies, going back to, say, Lord of the Rings and Boromir getting, shot in the chest by 6 or 7 arrows while he, that scene could very well have been, hell, you made a bunch of failed rolls, all my character, NPC bad guys made their rolls and your character dies, and turning it into a story building element where the player's like, well, I sacrificed myself because I failed my saving throw against wanting to go after the one ring, and I end up almost derailing the story because I was about to snatch up one of the halflings or whatever. You could kind of twist and turn those stories. Now, I personally, as a player character, would do that. I would turn and twist the stories based on those very die rolls to make it into something that's epic and a story that can really engage everyone at the table. But not everybody is like that. Not everyone is into, as a storyteller and as a person who loves narrative, by putting as much effort into the middle rolls, the mediocre rolls. I would say like between 8 and 12 or 8 and 15. And those high rolls, 16 and above, or those terrible rolls, 5 and below, 6 and below, and turning those into great storytelling elements can be very difficult. Nobody wants to be the failure. Okay, nobody's like, hey, I'm real proud I tripped and fell and my axe got stuck in a tree. Nobody wants to be that person. But using those low rolls and those where the dice kind of control the game are great ways to really test your storytelling ability. Absolutely, as a game master, and challenging you as a player to say, hey, my character keeps failing, but this is part and parcel of my character. I'm going to make this my story. And just to drive home my last point about letting the dice tell the story, ultimately, most stories in novels, movies, comic books, graphic novels and things, more often than not actually have storytelling elements where the main characters fail, and sometimes fail horribly, until they are able to rise up again to become this greater being. In an old video by Ander, great writer and creator of Within the Ring of Fire, I have to say, his point of view was that player characters, the stars, the embers, the flames in his game, that burn bright, are actually quite dim elements of themselves before they become greater than they are. So that they start out in this dark place. The game setting Dark Sun is another one where the player characters have to struggle in a medieval world where there is no metal and just about everybody is just, they're struggling just to survive. And so having failed die rolls in a situation where you have survival as your main challenge is an easier way to tell a story, so that as the player characters roll higher rolls, they are scrambling out of a deficit. They are becoming better than themselves, and this is the reason why they are seen as better than your average person. Otherwise, they would just be a villager and live and die in their own village and never see the rest of the world. So, my personal challenge, and a challenge to other GMs who are more narrative based, about asking for die rolls and then ignoring those same die rolls, is to say, basically, let the dice fall as they may. Ask for the die roll, even though in your mind you're going, you know what, if I ask for this die roll and it sucks, it's just going to blow the game, it's going to blow the scene. Ask for it anyway and see what happens, and then try to create a story around that. I'm not sure if all players who are dice control everything are this way in terms of telling games. Sometimes some people are just like, I just like to see the dice roll. I love to grab dice. I love to use Obsidian Portal, Roll20, Mythweaver, and I just like to let the numbers roll as they go. If I fail, great. If I succeed, I don't care. Telling a compelling story isn't the most important thing to me, but as a storyteller and not as a power builder, as a gamer, as a numbers cruncher, it is a personal journey for me to say, hey, listen, let the dice fall as they may, and then carve the story afterwards. More often than not, if I know that errant die roll, and of course this doesn't mean like, hey, this is usually a non-combat situation type of thing. When it comes to killing off players, hey, you're at 0 hit points and boom, you're dead, kind of thing. My resistance against killing players off by one simple errant die roll is because I would prefer a player character to have input into how that happens. And so therefore, having that, and matter of fact, in many role-playing games, they've done this where they've changed, whether it's hit points or wound levels or damage thresholds or whatever have you, they try to incorporate enough methods of saving the day just in case you want to extend the game just a little bit longer. Like in 5th edition, it's like you have 3 chances to make your death save, and you got that 3rd chance, got 3 chances, okay, failure, 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 okay, now you're dead. You're at 0 hit points, okay, if somebody comes along and just, what's the cleric spell, like spare the dying, hey, as long as you come along, you stop them at 0 hit points, okay, they're not going to die anymore, okay, you're done. There's a lot of save, we can save this guy so they can continue on, because it does suck to be killed, and, you have your first combat, 2 rolls later, and you're dead, and you're just like, what the hell, I didn't do anything, I didn't even get a chance to act, and I'm dead already? This game sucks. You don't want that at your table. On the other hand, using the wave of the hand as a game master to just save a player does suck. And my personal point of view as to just saving players just by doing that, that's not how I do it, but I did come across that way. I usually use the rule of, if as a game master I have to save you, I will punish you anyway. So that means, like, it's, the idea of hanging off the cliff, instead of falling 1,000 feet and dying a terrible death because you missed 1 climb roll, okay, your arm gets caught onto a rope or a root or something sticking out, your arm gets dislocated, your pack falls down into, the ravine, and anytime you try to use that arm, it's useless, or you're at like -2 or something, I take something away. You're at a penalty. You're at a minus. You lost something important. It's destroyed. You're at a fatigue level. You're something like that. And to enable the player character to continue, create another situation where, oh, hell, okay, we're not dead, but we have no food and water, and we're in the middle of the desert. What the hell are we going to do, kind of idea. That way, at least the story can continue, especially if it's in the very beginning stages. And the players still have some adversarial thing. It may not be another creature, but it could be the environment that they have to fight against. And then gives the player characters another opportunity to go, you know what, this turn of events didn't happen because someone made a bad decision. This turn of events didn't happen because of bad role-playing. It happened because somebody picked up a die, I asked for a climb roll, and they missed. Those are situations, to me, that we hadn't even got a chance to build a story yet, to even get to the point where the dice might, be life or death or whatever. This person just literally created their character, downloaded in a D20, and then 2 rolls later they're dead. And that, to me, sucks. You go 5 sessions into a game, it's a different story. Now the player characters are invested, they're creating stories, they're making decisions, knowing full well that they're going to make life and death decisions. If it's a life and deather, sure. I tend to stay away from 1 roll survivor kills, but I do go with the, okay, here's a backup roll. You go to jump across the cliff, you miss, all right, you're hanging by your fingertips, make a strength roll up or something of that nature, or hey, one of the player characters has to help you. They better make their roll, or now you're dead. I prefer that quote unquote saving throw where there's a multiple chance to survive, and if that doesn't work, you're dead. But I err in favor of punishment and pain versus straight out save versus death. Anyway, I've rambled on this FU video, and just follow up, I know. And I did come across quite angry, not angry, but just got a little adversarial, like, the whole dice fudging thing is bullshit. I did come across that way, and the reason why I did is because when game makers create games, they expect them to be played in a particular manner. Runeslinger has a great opposing video to one about rulings over rules and rules as written. And we often will read through the rules, and we often want to change the game to incorporate what kind of play style we want. For example, I don't remember if I've ever seen in any edition of Dungeons & Dragons where they encourage people to play a character above first level. But we all do that. Hey, let's start out at 3rd level or 5th level or 10th level, and there's nothing wrong with that if everybody agrees to it. But essentially, that's fudging a rule. That's changing it on the fly. Same thing with rolling stats. If you roll anything beyond a 3d6, as each edition has gone on, they've taken house rules and incorporated them into the game, like rolling 4d6 and taking the high 3, rolling 2d6 and adding, 10 to it or 8 or whatever the hell you want. All these kind of things were house rules that game creators knew, oh, man, people are playing their games differently. They're playing it maybe more high fantasy or more cinematic or grittier or something. Let's incorporate some of these rules. And so I took the stance that it's BS because many of us and all the people who commented, thank you, all those who comment on the videos I've read, I always read every single one, and there were a lot of them, and I read every single word, comment this from different points of view, from game master, from player, from playing in the game to before everyone is involved in the game, to long campaigns, to short one-shots, and everyone has their own opinions and both horror stories and great games that they've played in. And invariably, we're all colored by those experiences. Hey, kitty. And so those experiences drive us to how we view the game and where we perceive deception versus fudging rules, where we come at this great hobby. And myself included, sometimes we can get myopic. We can get focused on one particular thing. Maybe as a player, I'm getting focused on, hey, I've been with 3 game masters and they've all lied to me about how many hit points this creature has. Hey, I've played twice already, and every time I game master, these players are always lying to me about which feats they've taken. And so therefore, that ends up coloring your whole gaming experience. And it incorporates those same negative connotations along as well. I know I'm going very long in this video stream and in this rant, but ultimately, let's not lose sight of the fact that your negative experiences, and many of us as gamers have had them, doesn't necessarily mean that those actions are coming from a negative place. And open dialogue, like we have in this vlogosphere, is great and is awesome. And maybe someone like myself, I may perceive myself coming across as being amicable and saying, hey, my decision probably makes this a better story, and the players themselves may perceiving this as, man, that mofo, he keeps changing the story, and just let the dice roll as they may. And that may very well be, perception-wise, what can be happening at the table. So, great open forum. I'm glad you guys can look past my sarcasm. I'm very happy that I've been included and enveloped in this gaming world, and please do not stop the comments for or against. I'm glad I'm just surrounded by so many people who have such great insight, can look at things from different points of view, and by all means are able to communicate in a very creative and uplifting and positive manner. I don't know if anybody's going to get to the very end of this video, but as always, I try to have to sign off. Create, don't destroy. That rule goes for myself as well. So I hope this was a little more supportive of DICE overrulings in terms of challenging those of us who are storytellers to take some of those, I guess you could say, negative aspect die rolls and turning that into a story, even when cinematically or story-wise we're going, man, this is going to ruin it. Okay, maybe it won't ruin it. I just need to go down a different path. So anyway, create, don't destroy. Thanks for your attention, and I hope in some ways I've added something to your day. Thanks, guys. DBJ out.